There are alternatives to war. We take our case before the king. We plead with him.
Yes, we've tried that.
Well, then we try again and again if necessary to avoid a war.
For over 40 years, he's been the ghost on the highway, the guy in black leather behind the wheel of the last V8 Interceptor. He is the silent road warrior, a man of few words and a whole lot of action. An icon. Max Rokitansky. The name alone conjures up a world of asphalt, gasoline, vengeance, and survival. And for just as long, we figured Mel Gibson, the unknown actor who played him, was just a perfect piece of casting, but what if that's not the whole story? What if the most important part of Mel Gibson's Mad Max wasn't what we saw on screen, but what was left out on purpose? What if the character we all know was forged not in a writer's room, but by pure chance, brutal reality, and a secret that's been hiding in plain sight for decades? Lately, Mel Gibson has started talking about those early days, and he's revealing something that changes how you see his most famous character, the legendary films, and the performance that launched a superstar. The truth is far stranger, more chaotic, and way more fascinating than any post-apocalyptic movie. Before we get to the secret, let's remember the legend. When you think of Mad Max, what do you see? You see the worn-out leather. The sawn-off shotgun. You hear the roar of a supercharged engine, the soundtrack to a world gone crazy. Max is more than just a character, he's an archetype. He's the man with no name for the gasoline age, a Ronin wandering a wasteland, haunted by the wife and child he couldn't protect. He's the quiet survivor. The hero who doesn't want to be one. The man who, faced with a savage new world, becomes a monster just to be left alone. This image is what made Mad Max a cultural phenomenon. The first film, a gritty, low-budget revenge flick, was a shock to the system. It was raw, violent, and felt terrifyingly real. It took the anxieties of the 1970s oil crisis and turned them into a high-octane nightmare, pretty much inventing the modern post-apocalyptic genre as we know it. Every desert wasteland, every scavenger gang, every fight over the last drops of gasoline in movies and video games owes something to the world George Miller built, and at the center of it all was Mel Gibson. At the time, he was a fresh-faced unknown from Australia's National Institute of Dramatic Art. This was his big break, the role that strapped him to a rocket and shot him to stardom. His performance was seen as a masterclass in minimalism. He showed a universe of pain and rage with just a look in his eyes or a clench of his jaw. He was the calm center of a storm of chaos, and the world loved him for it. The legend only got bigger with Mad Max 2, or The Road Warrior as it's known in the States. That film stripped away what was left of the old world and threw us right into the apocalypse. It was bigger, faster, and cemented Max not just as a man, but as a myth, a wandering spirit of the wasteland. That's the official story we've all heard. A brilliant director, a groundbreaking film, and a gifted young actor. It's a great story. But it's only half of it. The real story, the secret of what really turned Mel Gibson into Mad Max, doesn't start with a script. It starts with a fistfight. To find the first piece of the secret, we have to go back to 1977, to a casting call in Melbourne, Australia. George Miller and his producer Byron Kennedy were in pre-production for Mad Max. They were working with such a tiny budget that Miller, who was also a medical doctor, was taking extra ER shifts just to fund the movie. They couldn't afford a star. They couldn't even afford to properly shut down roads for their car chases. They needed raw, unknown talent. Enter Mel Gibson. Well, actually, he didn't enter. He was just there to give his friend and classmate, Steve Bisley, a ride to the audition. Gibson had zero intention of auditioning. But the night before, he'd gotten into what he called a brawl at a party with an entire rugby team. He lost. Badly. So when he walked into the casting office, he wasn't the handsome drama student we know. His face was a mess. Swollen, bruised, battered. He later said his head looked like a busted grapefruit. He was just waiting for his friend, but a casting agent saw his mangled face and saw something. She took one look at him, said, "We need freaks in this film," took a Polaroid, and told him to come back in a couple of weeks after he healed up. Think about that. The first time the creators of Mad Max saw their future hero, they didn't see an actor. They saw a freak. A piece of walking, physical trauma that might look good in the background. A few weeks passed. Gibson's face healed, and he went back. But now, without the bruises, he was unrecognizable. He was just a strikingly handsome young man. The staff was confused until he pointed to the Polaroid on the wall, the picture of the guy with the busted grapefruit head. Stunned, the casting team saw something totally different. Not a background freak, but a leading man. They gave him a script and asked him to read for the director. Now, this story has become a bit of a Hollywood legend. The film's producer and Gibson's friend, Steve Bisley, have hinted the story might be a bit exaggerated. But Gibson himself has told the bar fight version for decades, and whether it's 100% true or not, the idea behind it is what's important. Max Rokitansky, a character defined by the trauma of losing his family, was born from an actor who walked into his first meeting literally wearing the signs of violence. The casting agents didn't just see a good-looking guy, they first saw him as human wreckage, perfect for their dystopia. The duality was there from the start, the handsome hero underneath and the broken man on the surface. George Miller didn't need to imagine Max's pain. For a second, it was right there in a Polaroid. This accidental encounter is the first major piece of the puzzle. Gibson wasn't chosen for Max despite his beaten-up face, he was chosen because of it. It put him on the radar in a way a normal headshot never could have. The role of a man with a deep capacity for violence found an actor who, by pure chance, walked in the door embodying that exact thing. This wasn't just casting. It was more like destiny. The legend of the Road Warrior didn't begin on a desolate highway. It began with a black eye and a lucky Polaroid. It's pretty incredible that one of the most iconic casting stories ever started with a bar fight. What do you think is the most important part of Max's character? His pain, his will to survive, or his reluctance to be a hero? Let us know in the comments. And if you're enjoying this look into film history, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next. The accidental audition got him in the door, but that's only one part of the secret. The performance itself, the thing that burned Mad Max into our brains, was forged by two other key elements. A deliberate, myth-making silence, and an on-set reality so raw and dangerous it basically bled onto the screen. This is where we get to the core of the revelation. The secret isn't just how Gibson got the part, it's that his performance came directly from a filmmaking style that embraced minimalism and genuine danger. Think about Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. You remember the car chases, the explosions, Lord Humongous's speeches. What you might not notice is that the hero barely says a word. Over the entire film, one of the greatest action movies ever made, Mel Gibson has a shockingly small number of lines. The legend says it's only 16, but it's probably closer to 40. Even so, that's an incredibly low number for the main character. He's on screen almost the whole time, but he's more of a presence than a person. This wasn't a script flaw or an actor's choice. It was a brilliant, calculated decision by director George Miller. He wasn't telling a story with dialogue. He was creating a myth with action. Miller loved silent films, the pure visual storytelling of Buster Keaton. His goal with The Road Warrior was to make pure cinema, a silent film with sound. He knew that the more Max talked, the more he'd just be a regular character. By taking away his words, he turned him into an archetype, like a Western gunslinger or a wandering samurai. Max's silence forces the audience to watch him. You can't learn about him from what he says. You have to study how his eyes scan the horizon, how he eats that can of dinky dog food, how he reacts to his dog's death with just a quiet slump of his shoulders. All the emotion and storytelling is in Gibson's physical performance. The silence was a canvas, and Gibson filled it perfectly. The haunted look that started as a coincidence in a casting office was now the main tool of his performance. That philosophy stretched to every part of the production, which brings us to the second, and much more dangerous, part of the secret, the raw reality of the set. The grit you see on screen wasn't just good production design. It was real. For the first film, many of the biker gang extras were paid in slabs of beer. To get the terrifyingly real villains for Toe Cutter's gang, Miller hired an actual outlaw motorcycle gang called the Vigilantes. These weren't actors, they were real bikers who rode their own bikes to the set every day. The production even had to give them letters to show police explaining they were in a movie. This commitment to brutal reality hit its peak with the stunts. Mel Gibson recently said he loves The Road Warrior the most because it was just pure. It was just a chase. It had some excellent thrills. No special effects, they were just throwing stuff out of a truck. He's not exaggerating. The stunts in these movies are legendary for their danger. This was before CGI. If you saw a car flip at 80 miles an hour, it's because a stuntman flipped a car at 80 miles an hour. The set was a pressure cooker of genuine risk. This wasn't some safe Hollywood backlit. This was the Australian outback with a renegade crew pushing the limits of what was safe. That environment directly affected Gibson's performance. He wasn't just acting like a man on edge in a dangerous world, he was a man on edge in a dangerous world. The exhaustion and the grim determination were all real, and the man behind the chaos was George Miller, whose past life shaped the film in ways most people don't know. Before directing, he was an ER doctor. The bone-crunching realism of the injuries in the movies came directly from the real-life trauma he saw treating car crash victims. The world of Mad Max wasn't just a fantasy, it was an exaggeration of the brutal realities Miller had seen firsthand. Even the dog in The Road Warrior was real. He wasn't a trained movie animal. He was a rescue dog, saved from a local pound just for the film. He bonded with Gibson immediately, so their relationship on screen feels real because it was. So, what's the big secret? It's this: Max Rokitansky isn't a character Gibson simply played. Max is a perfect storm of unrelated things. He's the bruised face of an actor who stumbled into an audition. He's the silent hero of a director's mythic vision. And he's the product of a genuinely dangerous filmmaking environment. Gibson's performance isn't just a performance. It's a document of a time when the line between fiction and reality was beautifully, and dangerously, blurred. Knowing this secret, the mix of accident, minimalism, and real danger, makes you look at the whole legacy of Mad Max differently. It's no longer just a story of a great actor in a great part. It's the story of how a character was forged by reality, how a film's weaknesses became its greatest strengths, and how a performance reflected the very chaos that created it. When Mel Gibson says The Road Warrior is his favorite because it was just pure, just a chase, he's giving us the key. The film's power doesn't come from its plot, which is incredibly simple. It comes from its kinetic energy and raw, practical stunts. Gibson's praise for the lack of special effects shows he knew exactly what made it special. He wasn't pretending on a green screen, he was in the middle of it all, and he knows that authenticity is why the film lasts. This also helps explain why Gibson's Max is such a landmark. The first two films were products of having no money. The tiny budget of Mad Max forced Miller to be creative, setting the story in a dystopian future, just so they could film on empty roads and in rundown buildings for free. The emptiness of the world came from an empty wallet. That gritty, dangerous style of filmmaking is a relic now. Compare the Gibson films to 2015's Mad Max, Fury Road. Fury Road is an absolute masterpiece, a perfectly planned symphony of destruction. But it's a different kind of perfection. Tom Hardy's Max is also a man of few words, but the world around him is a product of a massive budget and digital precision. Gibson's Max was the opposite, a character and a world born from scarcity, chance, and a willingness to embrace the unpredictable. He was lightning in a bottle. This isn't to say one is better than the other, just that they're fundamentally different. Gibson's Max is tied to the time he was created. His performance is a testament to an era when action heroes felt truly vulnerable because the actors playing them often were. Gibson didn't just help define the anti-hero archetype, he did it under conditions that pumped his performance full of a truth that just can't be duplicated today. So the character of Max, as played by Mel Gibson, isn't just fiction. He's an artifact. He's the ghost of a bar fight. He's the echo of a director's love for silent movies. He's the sweat and fear of a stunt team pushing things way too far. These aren't just trivia. They are the ingredients of the character. The haunted look in his eyes isn't just good acting, it's a reflection of the real, chaotic world he was born into. For years, we thought we had the story of Mad Max figured out. He was the ultimate action hero, and Mel Gibson was the actor born to play him. But the real story, the secret that's been there all along, is so much richer and more compelling. The character we thought was a work of fiction was actually a masterpiece of circumstance. He was born when a casting agent saw a freak with a bruised face and saw a hero underneath. He was sculpted by a director who dared to tell a story with silence and speed. And he was hammered into shape by the dangerous reality of a film set that was always on the edge of chaos. Mel Gibson's recent stories aren't just memories. They are the final pieces of the puzzle. They confirm that the grit, the pain, and the haunted soul of Max Rokitansky weren't just performed. They were experienced. They were real. So the next time you watch that black V8 Interceptor tear across the wasteland, remember the secret. The legend on the screen is only half the story. The truth is in the ghost of a bar fight, the power of silence, and the very real danger that was captured on film. Mel Gibson didn't just play Mad Max. In a way that can never happen again, the beautiful, terrifying chaos of the wasteland created him. Thanks for joining us on this trip into the secret history of one of cinema's greatest icons. The story of Mad Max is a great reminder that sometimes the best art isn't planned, it's found. If you found this story fascinating, please give this video a like and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories you thought you knew. And hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time, drive safe out there.